Well, I'm back. Good morning, friends. Another day. Um, we're going to do another lesson in behavior. Sorry for the delay here. I've been sick for 7 days with really bad flu. And this is the first day I've gotten up since last Wednesday. Hey, Julie. How are you? I am in the land of the living, and yeah, thank you. Hey, Jair, good to see you, buddy. Wow, you're just quick on that. Yeah, I was really sick, like evil sick. Hey, Stuart, nice to see you, buddy. Yeah, so I had to pull myself out of bed and get with it, or else I'd never get out. Lying in bed 24 hours a day watching forensic files, that can become a habit. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay, let's get to it. I had a really great call this morning. So one of my clients in Colorado, they have employees, obviously, and oftentimes the employees will just call in or they'll make an appointment, and then I'll get on the phone with them, and they'll want to just talk to me and ask me questions about how they think and how they view the world and so forth and so on. And this morning, this individual called and he didn't tell me this in the beginning. He told me at the end. So he just said, I'm just interested in learning more about myself. That's how the call started. So I just started telling him about himself. He had an agenda that I wasn't aware of until the end. But it's going to be great how this unfolds. So I'm going to do a screen share here and show you his numbers. So these are the numbers that came through as I looked at them. And so I want you, to take, notice of this over here, this chart, and pay attention. So here's what I told him. We'll call him Bob. That's not his name, but we'll just say it's Bob. Said, Bob, okay, here's what we got going on here. We're looking at your 4 primary energies. This is known as your energy system. It's the energy that we draw upon for doing things in the world. So D on the disc pattern represents dominance, and it's the anger energy. It's the anger emotion. So you see he comes in at a 10 on anger. So I said, Bob, you don't get angry, you get hurt. It doesn't mean you don't have anger in you as a person. It means it's not in play, which means you don't rely on it ever. So rather than getting upset and getting up in my face, you'll shut down and become scarce. And he was pretty shocked because I was accurate. It was an accurate reading. And I said, so you're not an angry person. What you are is a conscientious person. So you see the blue line there underneath the C, which represents conscientiousness. It's the fear emotion. So this is an emotion that has this heightened awareness of errors and mistakes. So what he's doing in the world is he's always imagining what could go wrong more than he imagines what will go right. So rather than imagining the possibilities, he thinks about the obstacles. Good or bad? Neither. Has nothing to do with that. It's just how he views the world. And so I said, you're overextended on both counts. So if you look over here at this chart right here, it kind of gives you a little bit of a gauge of where you're going to fall. And he's underextended on his anger. He's overextended in his fear because he's above 89 and below 12. So the higher you go in the energies and the lower you go in the energies, the more they solidify, like setting up in concrete. So his fear emotion is solidifying, and his anger emotion is solidifying. So let's just think about those two things. No, don't think about optimism and patience right now. Just think about anger and fear. So red and blue. To the degree that they are further apart and the fear is higher, will be to the degree that we start to slow down. So he has two speeds, slow and slower. He's almost at slow and stop. So this is a very calculated thinker. So everything he does, it's like looking at a math problem and solving this math problem. So very powerful. These are his assets. His assets are planning, accuracy, follow through, completing what he starts. So he's a very poor starter, but he's a terrific finisher. So he gets this slower start, like a train slowly starting, but then we get this great finish. It's a mile long and it's going 80 miles an hour and it just consistently runs on the track. And we know where it's going to be in any time during the day once we know the speed. So it becomes very reliable. So that's how his brain functions. Now his patience is high. His patience is running at an 82, which means he has a consistent cricket, and the consistent cricket is always cautioning him, making sure, it's safe to say this, safe to do this, safe to go there, safe to open that, safe to talk to this person, blah, blah, blah. So we got a lot of safety consciousness going on. So this is a security-driven brain. Now, I want you to see what happens when he gets to work. So that's going to be over here on the far left. When he gets to work, we got a couple little changes going on. His optimism, which is influencing the yellow line, drops. And the fear and patience drop just a tad. But the optimism dropping to the degree that it does actually makes the fear and the patience do nothing. So because the optimism is low, the fear and the patience are as high here as they are in his energy system graph. So I don't want you to think they're actually dropping, because they're not. What's dropping is the influence line, which causes these to remain high. So if you look at the difference between his influencing, his yellow line, and his patience and his fear, you look at the difference on both ends, you could see that there's a greater difference on the TARP profile. So that means they're taller, even though they look shorter. And so what he's doing is, when he gets to work, he shifts his emotions into a logical, stepwise thinker. Now, normally, he's more engaging when he's outside of work. When he gets to work, he disengages with people and he engages with facts and figures. He engages with static qualities, and he processes them over and over in his mind. And so he does this through a logical, sequential ordering, sort of like putting a puzzle together. We had a puzzle set out on Thanksgiving Day in the house, and people went over there and were, going to work the puzzle, and people started putting the puzzle pieces into piles, like all the blue pieces that represent the sky in one pile. You see, this is a logical, stepwise, sequential thinker. So this person who was doing that was an S. And then I found out it was my wife's mother, which is accurate. And so, planning and processing before they attack the problem or the challenge. They get all the ducks in a row, so to speak, and then they act once they know where everything is. So we want to make sure. Hi, Nicole. Thank you. Yeah, feeling a little better. You can still hear the nasally weirdness. Hey Nicole, let's catch up this week when you get a chance. Just you can book 30 minutes or whatever. I'd like to see where you're at. And so well, I lost my train of thought. So yeah, the puzzle. So that's logical stepwise thinking. So he attacks his work as if he's dismantling a bomb. So he's thinking, okay, cut the blue wire, make sure these wires are out of the way. Before I do that, make sure this and make sure that. So there's this whole process of eliminating any, potential dangers, before the act commences, the act of whatever it is he does. At this point, I don't even know what he's doing over there. I don't know what position he's holding. And I didn't ask him, and I'm just saying, I'm just taking him through his stuff. Okay. So, I want to shift gears here for a minute and look at this over here. Where's my... Oh. So I want to look at this right here. Okay. So this is his consistency graph. So where does his brain consistently lean when it comes to what he desires in the world? So this is very important. So I'm going to highlight these three things right here. Okay. So we've got aesthetic, economic, individualistic. Our graphs are being updated currently. This is all going to change. We keep doing that because we get a lot of feedback, and we want to make sure that we're moving with where people are at and where they're thinking. But this is going to be a lot easier, better able to be read and understood. So some things are changing. But for now, here's what we're looking at. So you can see this is in the ranking file. His aesthetic is number 1. So in his desire framework, he's an unconventional, unorthodox thinker, which means he's a unicorn. This is so funny. I said to him, listen, you take the long way home because it's a better view. And he just busted out laughing. He goes, that's exactly what I do. I take the long way home every day because I like the view. Oh man, it's great when you're that accurate. And so why does he do that? Because he is his brain is trying to find harmony between himself and his world. Okay? So if he's on an expressway, he's not harmonizing with the quote environment. He's in a rat race. Well, he doesn't have that kind of a graph. Okay? He's not in a hurry, low anger, and high fear. So he wants to be on roads that are going to create the most harmony, the most joy and pleasure, and the least amount of risk. Okay? So that's likely the long way home. And that's exactly what he does. His economic line, or his efficiency line, that's going to be changing to efficiency. So his efficiency line is lower. So he's inefficient. So it's not efficient to take the long way home, is it? It's pleasurable, but it's not efficient. So he doesn't do things in an efficient way because he has to feel what he's doing. He isn't operating in a sense of, I got to get this done and then get, what's coming to me at the end of it. He's like, no, I want to enjoy the journey. So he's not about the product, he's only about the process. So the higher you are on your efficiency line, the more productive your brain thinks. And the lower, the less productive your brain thinks. So does this mean he's completely unproductive? No. In certain spaces, he'll be completely unproductive. Yes. So what are we doing? We're trying to maximize his abilities and his natural tendencies in his work so that he's in a place of talent, not potential talent. He's in a place of actual talent. All right, next thing. His power line right here is low. So what that means is he doesn't fight for what he wants. He settles for what he can get. So what does that mean? It means that he'll leave a meeting wishing he had said more rather than leaving the meeting wishing he had said less. So he didn't have time. There wasn't enough time in the meeting because he has to process everything he's going to say to make sure it's accurate. It's going to make sense to everybody. And if too many people are throwing in their 2 cents, he doesn't want to throw his 2 cents in because he's unrestricted here in his individualism, which means he doesn't want to be a penny in a jar of pennies. He wants to be the red penny in the jar of pennies. So unless his information, unless his ideas are going to be seen as unique and operated on, in other words, we're going to take your advice, he's not going to do it because he basically doesn't throw his pearls before swine, so to speak. So it's very powerful. So this creates this unicorn-esque type of a style where all their energy is in the creative thought and processing and harmonizing with the world, and less energy is in capturing everything you can get for yourself out of the world. So if you go back to his TARP process, you see the T in TARP over here. That stands for taking. He's a 12. So he doesn't take things out of the world. He's the responsive, the R in TARP. He's responsive, which means he basically waits for things to show up. Okay, so right here, he doesn't make things happen. That's taking. He hopes things happen. That's responsive. So he responds to outside sources and activities as they happen. And if they don't happen, he has nothing to respond to. Okay? So he patiently waits for the right circumstances to unfold. And if they don't unfold, then there's nothing he can do about it. What else can we look at here? The P, okay, preserving. So he's a preserver. So this guy is terrific at holding the fort, but he's terrible at taking the hill. And so the difference between his anger and his fear and his taking and his preserving creates a hunkering in the bunker. So he wants to get into a position during the day and hunker down in a safe space and do something predictable all day long that's reliable. So to get to the end of this whole thing, I asked him, I said, so Bob, what do you do? And he said, I work in the designing part of the company. I said, okay, that makes sense. He goes, but I have to make a decision. If I'm going to go fully into the drafting division or the designing division. And I knew right away what he should do. And that is drafting. And so, the reason being is because of this right here on his TARP. So the TARP is him in shared space. When he gets into the world and he's in shared space, he spends all his time in the part of his brain that solves math problems. I said that to him and he just laughed out loud. And I said, here's what's going on. You're going to feel really good the less risks there are, because the lower your anger and the higher your fear, the more risk adverse you become. And your behavior always overpowers your desires. So what does he desire again? He desires this. Okay? Creative expression. Okay, he desires creativity, which is why he's torn between drafting, right, and design. He's torn because he has that feeling of design because he looks like a poet or a chef. So he has that designing piece going on inside of him. And he's moderately theoretical, which means he's intuitive more than he's calculating when it comes to his desire. So he doesn't want to read everything. He wants to read enough when it comes to certain things, but he'll read everything on other things. And so this means he's relying more heavily on his intuition than he is on his intellect. Okay? Excuse me. Oh my God. I'm feeling like my head is going to explode. I'll have to go in and take some Excedrin. Anyway, so that's what we got. But what's going to win out in the end? What's going to win is his behavior. Your behavior wins every single time. You got to know that. What you will actually do will overpower what you desire. So what we want isn't always what we do unless what we want and what we do are in flow. Okay? And so for Bob, he needs to go into the drafting. And because all day long, he's going to be thinking, processing, calculating, hunkered in a bunkered position with less conversation and more analytical reasoning in a logical stepwise fashion inside his head, not coming out of his mouth. And I said that to him, and he said, "Why, that's so funny. I was leaning towards the drafting, but I just like the design too." I said, "Yeah, I know you like the design, but you're going to be happier in the drafting." And he agreed. And so this was a 30-minute call. We solved the problem. Should I do design or drafting? Well, do drafting, because that's where you're going to shine. That's your sweet spot. That's where your energy is. That's what's going to work. And that's what he's going to do. So another happy customer. So this is what we do, folks. We help you. Okay, won't he have a bit of a conflict because he's not really satisfying his creativity? No, he won't. Because look at this Jair, look at his economic and his power. They're very low. He doesn't fight for what he wants. He gives up. So if he has this desire for creativity, his brain's going to go, oh well. And then he's going to go back to the calculating thinking. So I told him, I said, as long as you keep taking the long way home after work, you're going to fulfill your creative piece there. And if you're cooking on the weekends and doing some little hiking and whatever on the week, you're going to fulfill it there. But in your 8 hours a day, in your work, you're going to be better suited for low dominance, high compliance, because that's where the strength is. That's where all his energy is. And when we go to work, we do our energies. We don't do our desires, typically, unless there's a flow. And so, yeah. He's just going to let it go. Because he doesn't fight for what he wants, he settles for what he can get. So if he does have any more desires, he's just going to throw up the white flag and go, yeah, whatever. And then he'll continue the drafting, and it will work well with his mind, and he'll never feel out of place. He'll always be in place in that role. So super powerful. So it would change if his political and economic were higher. Yes, it would. Because he would want to fight for the designing. And then also, if that were the case, we'd probably have a different behavioral profile on the TARP graph. So we don't. What we have is we see what he wants in his value set, but we see what he actually does in his behavior set. The way he functions well is in this calculated, internalizing, passive fashion. He's a passive brain type. He's not an active brain type. So he doesn't make things happen. He doesn't imagine things happening. He hopes and doubts. What'll happen is, let's say he's drafting for 6 weeks, and then he starts getting an itch for design. His brain will just go, well, you can't fight City Hall. Already made the decision. and he'll just leave it. And then he'll go back to doing what he's doing, which works for him, and it won't feel bad. It'll feel fine. And after a while, it'll go away. Because he consistently settles for what he can get. And so what's interesting, he was already leaning in this direction. So it was already in him to do this. He just couldn't figure out what to do. And sometimes, we here at the Behavioral Resource Group are the tipping point for a lot of people, to just kind of tip them over into the right place so that the next couple of years will be really wonderful. All right, I got to go take pills because my head's about to explode. Anyway, appreciate you guys all tuning in. And this is also going to go up on the YouTube channel. And we'll be doing consistently these videos to help you understand human behavior and even your own behavioral mindset. Have a good day.